more on the terror attacks in Paris. I'm joined right now by Col Cedric Leighton. Colonel Leighton is a former intelligence officer in the U.S. Air Force and former member of the Joint Staff at the Pentagon. He is now chairman of the consultancy firm Cedric Leighton International Strategies. Colonel, all these suspects that have been killed today had already been known to authorities. Both brothers, for example, had been on the watch list of possible terrorists for years. In your view, was this a failure in intelligence to not have prevented these attacks?
Well, Trish, I think anytime you have an attack like this where they actually kill people, there is a certain degree of intelligence failure that does go with that. So the question then becomes, what could have been done before the attack occurred in order to prevent the attack from happening? And those are always difficult things to answer. The United States had put both brothers on the no-fly list, for example. In France, there is a lot of consternation that the U.S. did that, but that the French did not react to it. So I think what it points to is the need for increased international intelligence sharing and to improve the relationship between the French intelligence services internally within France as well as externally with partners outside of France. And the relationship is very good, but it obviously needs to get better, and we need to begin to trust each other in this area.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't good as recently as when the Europeans were coming down pretty hard on the NSA.
Right.
So clearly there have been issues there. Do you think that this changes the equation? Might the Europeans be more accepting of our surveillance of them now?
Well, I think that's a very good question, because all of the Snowden revelations relating to NSA had a lot of resonance within Europe, especially in Germany, but also secondarily in France. Le Monde, the main French newspaper, kind of analogous to the New York Times, did publish a piece, though, on French surveillance, French data mining, that was pretty close to what the NSA was doing, and the French were doing it on their own citizens. And so there is clearly the technical capability to do this. The key question is, how do you do that and still maintain democracy and freedom so that you can have the Charlie Hebdos of the world and not have those Charlie Hebdos attacked? And that's really the issue that all democracies face at this moment.
Let me ask you this, Colonel. Is this at all a wake-up call for us back here at home? You think about all the cities in the U.S. that might be vulnerable to similar styled attacks, and you think about sort of the leniency or the complacency that might have settled in the last several years. I mean, I think about New York City, for example. There was a time for over 2 decades where we had police that were in mosques throughout the city. That has changed with this mayor's administration. Do we need to be more vigilant? Is this a wake-up call?
I think vigilance is the key to liberty. And so when you put it in those terms, when you understand that in order to maintain that liberty, you have to have a degree of vigilance to protect that liberty, then it becomes I think, a different and more crystallized issue. So in the case of New York City, it is important to maintain surveillance, but it's also important to get cooperation of the local population. Most Muslims do not do this. Most Muslims are opposed to what has happened here, and they do so very vociferously in many cases. But it's the extremists that we have to confront, no matter where they come from. And it's in everybody's collective interest to create the structures that allow for that vigilance to be there, and for that vigilance not only to be there, but to be effective. And that's, I think, what we need to see in this situation.
I mean, do you think that we might be seeing a changing tone here in the U.S. in terms of people's willingness or acceptance of a little more surveillance when it comes to the overall population because of the events that have unfolded this week?
Well, we have a tradition of being somewhat conscious of our privacy and of our ability to conduct business without a constant peek over the shoulder. So that has to be balanced with the need to protect public places and to protect those institutions that, in essence, are the mouthpieces of democracy. And whether we agree with them or not, that's almost immaterial. We have to protect the right of all these institutions and these organizations to say the things that they want to say, as long as it's not something that is, calling fire in a be in a crowded theater, as the old analogy goes, and that is when there's no fire. And that's the big issue. You know, I think it's going to be a situation where we do have more acceptance of surveillance as long as the results of that surveillance aren't misused. So that balance has to be achieved in a way that protects our freedoms, but also protects our physical being. And that's really the balance that needs to be there.
The bottom line is people want to be safe. Colonel Cedric Leighton, thank you very much.